Hello. Good
Hi, guys.
morning. Welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I am Jillian Aurora, and I'm here today with my co-host Marie Wallace.
Hi, everybody.
We're so glad that you've joined us today. I just want to thank you for joining us wherever you're coming from today, whether you are on Facebook Live. This is what we do every Thursday. You can find us on our group, which is Braveheart Conversations, facebook.com/group/Braveheart Conversations, or you can find us on Spotify, Podbean, iTunes, all the places. So yes, thank you for joining us. This morning, I want to talk about actually a wound that has come up for me recently. This has been a challenge. It's feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes those of us that are achievement oriented,
Guilty.
we can like burden ourselves with a lot of different tasks, and we can often start to feel lonely, right? Like, I'm in this alone, nobody is helping me. Like, that can be a real victim-y wound that I get caught up in. So I just want to read something that I wrote this week that helped me kind of process those feelings. And I'm hoping that some of this will resonate for you as well if you are also an overachiever. All right, so I recently got a nostalgic trip down memory lane with some of my old victim-y wounds of abandonment. In the past, I chose into relationships where I felt unsupported. I felt alone in shouldering many heavy responsibilities. I felt like everyone else got to go play and enjoy life, while I took care of a very lopsided list of tasks. I felt abandoned because many of the people on my team, partners, coworkers, bosses, roommates, etc., would leave me to pick up after them, edit their mistakes, finish incomplete tasks, repair damaged relationships with clients, and leave me the burden of the bulk of the work. I felt like they didn't care. I felt like my teammates saw me suffering under the burden of so many responsibilities and yet continued to go play at my expense. I felt like my natural propensity for efficiency, thoroughness, and resourcefulness were constantly being taken advantage of. Not only did it just happen, everyone seemed oblivious, like I was just the default. I was just the assumed responsible party. If there is one thing I know about anything, it is that I always have a part. My pain is not an accident. It's always teaching me something. So this week I got to look at that wound square in the face again, because obviously it isn't healed. Instead of getting defensive and feeling like a victim, I get to get curious. My pain got to show me my part in seeming to always end up with a very lopsided load of the work in many of my relationships. I got to look at how I was teaching others from the very start how to be treated. As fast as I would set boundaries, I would often break them. With a good enough exception, people were off the hook. So people learned to always have a good excuse. I taught people I was accommodating. I have had a lifetime of experience bending myself around others' needs, and it was second nature to embody the attitude, "Don't worry, I'll be happy to take care of it." Eventually, people don't even bother to ask. They just know you'll take care of it, even if it's on their task list. I taught people accessing my resourcefulness, efficiency, and strategic skills came at no cost. No one had to ask permission to have them. Not only did I give them away, I often forced them down people's throats. I taught people I was self-reliant. If a task looked like it wasn't going to be completed, I'd step in to save the day. People learned I didn't really need them anyway. Lastly, I taught myself people weren't to be trusted, that they were flaky, unreliable, and looking to take advantage of me. I learned to believe I wasn't really supported by others and the universe. These beliefs were toxic for myself and others and have never served me. I get to heal my wound of abandonment when I address and heal my own behaviors that keep perpetuating the cycle. The divine goddess within you and within me will not settle for old, worn-out, toxic programming. We will continue peeling away layer by layer as we heal every generational wound we have developed and lived out. So, I finally made it through without crying.
You did good.
So this is a big one for me. I very much have struggled with that feeling, and the common denominator is me in all of my relationships.
Me too.
But it really has just continued to show up, that I have felt that sting of resentment, like I'm alone and I don't have teammates helping me. Mm-hmm. And so really owning my part, which is all of that over functioning, mm-hmm. it not only teaches me, right, informs me that I'm the only one that's gonna do it mm-hmm. right or be trustworthy. It also informs everybody else that, oh, I'm off the hook. I don't really need to be there because she's got it, right? Which can be a coping skill. It can be a trauma coping skill, mm-hmm. you know?
Well, we also think that it's a way that people trust us. We're mm-hmm. trustworthy and responsible. And, you know, those are traits that we cultivate as good girls. So, mm-hmm. yeah. I saw myself a lot in there.
Yeah.
Self-reliant.
Right, which I see as a really good thing.
Sure, it's right? a really great skill.
But everything has a shadow side, and for me that shadow side is when I'm so self-reliant, and basically like I come at things with the attitude, well fine, if you're not going to show up, I'll just do mm-hmm. it myself and I don't need you anyway. Right. That is really what's going on in my head. And that is really, that's an energetic response. That's like a F you, I'm
coping,
good,
yep.
and I don't need anybody. And it's...
Well, in the background, too, it's running that I'm resentful.
Yep.
So in the background, I'm just going, well, if they... And so I'm making up stories about their part without owning my part, the responsibility for yep. my part in the situation.
I'm really just calling in that repetitive cycle, that belief that people aren't trustworthy, because mm-hmm. that's really what's going on exactly. in the back of my head is, yep, I knew it, I wasn't supported.
They can't do it on their own.
I wasn't supported, I don't have a team, I should have just done it anyway. So those keep me stuck. Those beliefs really keep me stuck. So what I get to own is, how have I taught other people from the very beginning? And it's usually in those very, very first steps of getting to know someone or establishing a relationship, is we teach them unconsciously. Nobody's mm-hmm. aware of all of these exchanges happening, but very unconsciously I'm teaching them that any excuse is going to be okay, right?
People pick up on patterns. We're built that way. We're built to pick up on patterns, and we're like, oh, she said she'd take it. Oh, she could take it. Oh, she can take it.
Totally. And I can even see that in myself. If I perceive someone else as really strong and self-reliant, then they don't need me, right? It's like an automatic, like it's a trigger. Mm-hmm. You just know that, oh, they're super strong. They got it. And so I actually block myself off from having help and having a team, because I'm not actually expressing that it isn't gonna be okay to not be a teammate, even if you have good excuses, right? And this is where it's tricky for me, because it requires me to face my old accommodating programming and say, you know, even with all of the excuses, you know, I can still have compassion that, oh, there's really terrible things happening in your life, and that's just not going to be a fit for me. Like I require teammates that pull their weight. Mm-hmm. I require relationships that pull their weight.
That's what team is.
Right. Yeah. And I didn't require that in the past. So this is just a whole new level for me, is really making those requirements that if you're part of my team, then you will act like part of my team. Otherwise, I can do just like we've talked about in so many other relationships, we can release, right? And just acknowledge that this isn't a fit. It's not that you're a bad person, it's that I require a certain level of participation in relationships. So that was a big one, was the boundaries piece. This is what is required. And then that other one, like accommodating, really teaching people that accommodating is my second nature default. And again, very, very subconscious, but very powerful in the messages that I am conveying. So,
well, we'll say it's okay and it's really not, and then get mad at them. I think that's hilarious.
Or like if truly I am like, okay, well, I'll just take care of it, and then in the back of my head I'm thinking, gosh, they're so unreliable and I can't believe they did this, then I'm not really being honest.
Why, you're not in alignment or congruent with what you're saying.
No. So there gets to be a whole different level of honesty. I'm gonna check. I think we might have some comments.
It's Tana.
Hi, Tana. I miss you.
All amazing changes.
Yeah. I can see this in you, Tana.
Yep.
This is such a this is a big feminine wound. I think there's men that struggle with this too, but I think that there's a nurturing side of women where a lot of that is conditioned in us, right? We're taught from a really young age to be accommodating and nurturing.
Under the guise of caring. If I care for someone, I will. Right? That's the feminine nature.
Yeah. I love you,
Hi,
Tana.
we miss
Thank
you
you.
too.
Yeah, I think one of the pieces in this puzzle of like over functioning is that I'm harming myself, because obviously we're meant to be fully supported. We're meant to be operating collectively, not isolated.
No.
But there's another side to this too, that we are not meant to be stealing those opportunities from other people, and we harm other people when we are over functioning.
Yeah, we're taking away their autonomy.
And their ability to develop their own skills.
Yeah.
And I was in my unapologetic group last night, and one of the gals was talking about how we were talking about this particular issue, and she talked about how her son didn't learn to tie his shoes until he was 6 years old, because she didn't think he could, and she was rushing, and so she would just do it. And it's those little things that we actually put people at a disadvantage, even though we think that we're helping, we think that we're serving them, but they aren't developing their own skill set. And I think that this is really, really common in women today with their kids, because, the helicopter parent, right? The parents that are so involved that they don't let their kids experience their own failures and their own struggles. And those like build resiliency.
Exactly.
Like huge. They build skills and resiliency. We all need that.
Well, that function that they're going to need out in the real world when they graduate or whatever it is, because I think of the parents. I had a couple of parents as a teacher where these are my favorite. Like one of the teachers, she was like, well, I thought my job was all done. It was a parent who was so sweet and honest, and she goes, I thought my job was done once I sent them to kindergarten. And you're going, no, that's really when it begins. Or the ones that would say, like one kid missed 108 days of school because she said, and it was a second grader, because she said, well, she just doesn't get up. Or those things. And so there was no system built in for the child to be successful at listening to her alarm, or you know, or whatever those things are, because we do tend to take over, or we don't allow them to do their own laundry, or we're talking some family systems now, but those are ones that usually where we try to take over the role, especially like you said, as moms or caregivers. We just take on too much responsibility. Either we're rushing, like you said, or we just well, we can do it faster and better, or they can't do it yet, or whatever the thing is.
So many excuses.
So many excuses.
Yeah. However, we often think we're being mean when we are keeping people accountable, right? And when we are letting them struggle. Like, that feels mean. But
I don't know how to separate whites and darks.
Figure
You'll
it out. Yeah. So, like, we're actually stealing from them. Like, that is a kind thing to do, to let them be accountable.
Well, and they feel so much better. Like, you'll see them like, I did it.
Yeah. And I found that I've given people excuses really often. I look back on, I've had a lot of relationships where there's been some sort of a crisis. And I think about all the times that I filled in the gaps, right? So I had partners who experienced crisis. I had family members who experienced crisis. I had coworkers. And so often my response would be, oh, you're going through this difficult time. I will just overextend myself and make it happen so that you don't have to think about it while you're going through this thing. And the thing is, it's such an illusion because you think it's going to be temporary, but there's always crisis. So I found myself always overextending myself. And then you get into a pattern where people are just expecting that of you and they don't even have a second thought about that you're overextending yourself because that's just who you are. So it just became a pattern for me that just would perpetuate itself. But when I really get honest, when I've had my own crises, and what I'm talking about is when I've had health problems or an injury or a breakup or divorce or, there's all sorts of stuff, financial crisis,
overwhelmed, depression,
like all of those things, I was able to figure it out. I never for a second thought, oh, well, so-and-so will just do it for me. Like, I trusted in my own resiliency and I trusted in my own problem solving. But where I've gotten really dishonoring in the past is I have not extended that belief of resiliency for someone else. I babied them because I thought that they couldn't do it.
Yeah. It reminds me of that butterfly metaphor we've talked about. So the butterfly's in and trying to stretch its wings, and it's the pushing on the cocoon that pumps the blood, or whatever you call it for butterflies, I think it's blood, into their wings to make them stronger. And when someone comes in, I know this from teaching kindergarten, when kids try to help that butterfly out, the butterfly all of a sudden is not strong enough because it didn't have that opportunity to exercise the wings and get them fully functioning. And so I think that's just a really great metaphor from nature. When we try to help nature, the butterfly doesn't get that resiliency and that strength to run off and fly because someone's helped.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always loved that metaphor. That's so great. And I think humans are the same way. When we help too much, it's actually very harmful. And they don't develop the resiliency that they're capable of. And my disbelief in people has been really detrimental.
When I go back and look at how I feel in that moment of being resilient and powerful and strong, because we've had those moments where we're going, wow, I'm so strong. I am stealing from them. I'm robbing them of that same joy and that feeling of I can conquer anything, because that's a skill that they're building. And that leads into the next event where they can be strong and resilient. And the next event, unfortunately, we will get plenty of opportunities to practice resiliency. And I just don't want to be that person to take that from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there's elements when I've had to practice overcoming something or being resilient. Some of the factors, they're ugly, right? You go through those moments where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm screwed. And you go through the self-pity and there's all the phases. And so often when we watch somebody go through those phases, we're like, oh God, I need to save them. Like, they can't do it. When, like, I know I had to go through those phases, and eventually you go through all the self-pity, you go through your moment of like, you know, the world is ending, and then you figure it out. And
Well,
then you
without
feel
all the
better.
help, you have more possibilities, right? Because you're forced into this situation where you don't have the help and you're going, well, I have to figure it out.
Yep.
And so it forces creativity and all those ways to think outside of the box.
Yep.
And yeah, so
A lot
it's
of
a really
beautiful
important
things happen under
I know,
pressure.
it's really ugly, but there's some really pretty things too.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it great when the butterfly gets out of the cocoon?
Yeah. And wouldn't you hate to have ruined that
I
opportunity?
know, that would be sad. I also remembered something that you said in there. We're resentful of the people that go run off and play. And we tie ourselves into all these things that we have to do, and that's where the overwhelm comes. And then we don't go play because we have this checklist of things that we feel so responsible for doing. So I remember that from what you wrote, and it's like, yeah, then they're off playing, and then I'm resentful because they're off playing and I want to play, but I can't, and you know, layering that on. So
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've had that feeling. And really it's that lack of accountability. That's what it has boiled down to me over and over, as I've set these boundaries and then I haven't
been
followed through.
wishy-washy.
And I have not held people to that standard, that requirement that if you want to be in whatever relationship capacity, whether that's a coworker relationship or partner relationship or whatever, like, you get to be a team with me, right? And that's what the standard is required to be in that relationship with me. And so where I've often found myself is I'm way overworking, resentful that they're playing, and then it's like I haven't honored me. You know, so when we both are showing up for our responsibilities, we both get to go play.
I know, it's
Right?
so much more fun.
But if I fail to uphold my boundaries and my accountability, then I do end up in this position where I'm watching other people play because I haven't set those boundaries and followed through with them, with that person. And so then it's become this dishonoring. Does that make sense?
And a lopsided relationship. I
Very.
think the happiest relationships I have been in are those where we were co-working or we were teammates in situations, and we shared the burdens, and you shared the joy. So you get to share
Yes.
the fun and the play just as much as you do share the burden or the responsibilities. Not always a burden, but responsibilities.
Right. Yeah, it's so much more honoring
some
for
comments.
everyone. Yeah, let's take a peek. Okay. Oh, I always end up hitting something. Can I get out of this?
Oh dear. There we go.
Okay. Let's scroll gently. Veronica, let's respect the other person enough to know they can handle their own
Yeah.
stuff. Absolutely. And if they need help or an ear, of course. Yes, encouragement is huge. The parable of Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha. Oh, yeah. So I remember Mary and Martha. I forget which one was which. I want to say Martha was the worker. She was the one always working and
She was the one
resentful.
washing the feet.
And Mary was with Jesus.
Washing his feet.
Right. And she was enjoying his presence, and she was enjoying the moment instead of working.
And Mary was ready to take care of all the guests and all the things, and
Yeah. So
thanks for bringing that up.
yeah, that's a great example. Honestly, I mean, not like, it's been a long time since I've read that story, but thinking about that, sharing those responsibilities together would have
Then you
allowed
both get to have
it would have allowed them both to be present, which I think that's probably a little off from what that story
means in that
I
situation.
don't know why we are
We're missing.
flipped. Anyway,
There we are.
go. Okay,
Don't you just love it?
totally. Technology.
We're back.
Yeah, I can't see comments here because I wasn't tagged in the post.
Oh, okay.
So
We'll tag you.
Anyway, I don't think that the parable ended in the way, I think, if I remember correctly, Jesus was saying that the person who was present was, that was more where we needed to be. I don't know that I would totally agree with that outcome, because I think that it's when we share responsibilities that we can both enjoy. It's not that responsibilities just go away. And I think that that's the burden of many of us who are over functioning, is we see the need, we see the things that the responsibilities. People don't eat unless you cook, right? There's certain things that they really need to get done. And what often happens is if we don't make those needs known, like, hey, I need help, and this
shared goals.
Yeah, this isn't just my responsibility. What ends up happening is other people, like, we've probably all seen that commercial that, like, a long time ago, there was this commercial where this guy was like we have this magic coffee table. It just, every night, it cleans itself.
Oh, yes.
And,
but how many parties, or even like my very first conference I did, I remember just running around, doing all the things. And I did have some shared responsibility, but I felt it upon myself to do all of that. And then I wasn't getting it to enjoy the people that were there. And it was so great because I ended up having this really good friend of mine who had me just stop and be in the moment. And then she helped me do some of the things, and I just didn't even realize it while I was in the middle of it that I was missing out on all the fun and enjoyment of the people, which is why I was doing it. And then staying in the middle of responsibility. So
right.
So
that's the responsibilities.
How many parties have we done where we've been the only person?
Right. And if you don't share the responsibilities, then other people will just assume that they just magically get done.
Yeah, that coffee table.
It's just like, it's human nature to do that. Oh, it's done. It's out of sight, out of mind, right? I just don't even think about it. So part of this is requiring other people to be those teammates, because it's dishonoring for all of the things to be on one person. If we don't cook, none of us eat. So we should all get to participate in whatever is going to serve the whole community. So,
and putting away the dishes.
We're all going to have different coping skills. Some of us, we will take a step back, and we're under functioners, right? There are some that will under function in the middle of chaos. They will step back, and then there are over functioners where we get really active, and we both get to practice being in roles we're a little uncomfortable. It is very uncomfortable for me to lean back and let things be undone. That is like torture, but it is exactly where I get to be. A lot of the time, I get to take a step back and let other people figure some things out, because I'm robbing them of those opportunities. And we get to be collectively responsible for mutual responsibilities and things that need to get done. So I'm specifically speaking to overfunctioners right now. So all of you that tend to jump in and get it all done and don't wait for anybody else to help, that hear who I'm talking to.
And to ourselves sometimes. So she said sometimes putting things down.
Yeah. So we don't have the monopoly on the activities. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, is if you take a step back, we allow other people the opportunity, to even see that the work is there, right? Like that coffee table example. Well, if she let it be dirty for a night, he might see, oh, it's not a magic coffee table. There's actually something to be cleaned, right? But if you don't ever even let the person see, have the opportunity of seeing that there's work to be done, they never have the opportunity to even contribute.
Well, I remember some big family dinners where we'd have like 30 people over, and then it would just be Joe and I washing the dishes and putting things away. And then when it started happening at other people's houses, they didn't know. They would have definitely jumped in and helped, but we're like, oh, it's okay. And you're going, wait a minute, because then they would have gladly, and that those chores being shared, and it allows us to laugh and play while we're doing the dishes or the chores, right? Because we can still make that fun, but it also lightens the work. Many hands, light work.
Absolutely. Yep, and that's the goal, is when we're all functioning as a team, we all get to participate and play together, and we all get to
breathe, and we can breathe and enjoy and play.
Yeah, and then we are all feeling acknowledged, and that was such a big thing for me, was I felt abandoned, right? I felt lonely because it felt like everybody else was playing at my expense. And that's a really icky feeling, and we all have a part in that, and I get to heal my pattern of over-functioning and my lack of requirements for other people to create a change that I want.
So if we're feeling overwhelmed, that was our checklist. You just gave us a checklist.
Yeah, so if you find that that's a pattern for you, remember you're the common denominator in all of your relationships. So there's always something for us to own. You know, if it's an anomaly and it's something that doesn't normally happen, you know, maybe that's somebody else's deal. But if you're finding yourself in repeat relationships where you're continually feeling overstretched and overburdened, you have a part. So I know for me, that was hard. I mean, I was sobbing writing that because I was identifying my parts, and they were really deep wounds. I had a lot of abandonment that came up because I felt so lonely in doing all these tasks and feeling like nobody cared. So we get to own our parts. I hope that is helpful for you in like hearing some of the things that came up for me, like, oh, I set boundaries and I didn't keep them, or I was very accommodating, or I had very little belief in other people. Like, those were all contributing factors to me feeling very isolated and abandoned. So find your list, find your part, because you have some healing to do. It's not just everybody else that's abandoning you. There's some parts of you that get to be looked at as well.
Thanks for the love.
Yeah, I
Hi,
appreciate
cousin.
that. All right, are we
I think
good?
that's wrap.
Are we closed? Okay. Are we complete?
We are complete.
Awesome.
Thanks for being here, you
Yeah, I
guys.
appreciate all the comments too. I appreciate whenever you guys engage. It means a lot that we're having a conversation. With that, we'll go ahead and close up. If you guys have any questions or topics that you would like to hear us discuss in the future, or if you disagree, please send all
let us
of
know
that.
when you disagree too. We like that.
We really appreciate, because when you push back and you tell us what your resistance is, it gives us
Another perspective,
and it gives us something that we can talk about the next time too, and it just continues on the conversation. So don't be shy about sharing with us. My email address is defytheaverage@gmail.com, and you can always shoot me over an email with any questions or comments, and then you can also reach out to Marie
at mariesgold.com. So we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, yeah. And with that, we'll wrap up. You can see us again every Thursday morning live. We're here. Join our group at facebook.com/groups/Braveheart Conversations, and find us on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, all the places. And we love you all very much, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.